Blanket. You know that old guy who loves to tell the story about how he got bit by a cardinal one time and he just keeps telling it to you like you've never heard it before? That's me, I'm the old guy. I've said this a lot of times before, but the reason I started making art years ago was because I wanted to make a comic. And right before sitting down to film this section of the video, I was laying on the floor of my living room like you do after you have a belly full of mozzarella sticks, thinking about how I could show you both the things I want to show you today and talk about them in a way that made sense. So here we are. For whatever reason, on the last day of October, I decided that I wanted to participate in NaNoWriMo. Even though I had nothing drafted and nothing planned, I just couldn't think of anything that sounded better than like diving into a fictional world of my own creation for a month. And while I won't be sharing the writing itself publicly, I do have some character sketches to show you. If you haven't seen art that I've done like this before, it may seem really different to what I normally do. I don't know, maybe it doesn't seem that different, but to me, I have had so much trouble over the years reconciling these two branching ways of how I like to make art. I love to paint and to sculpt and to do these sort of surreal portraits, but I also really love just designing characters and doing digital sketches, and for whatever reason I just can't seem to make them overlap. And maybe that's okay, maybe it's alright to have two separate things, but it does make it really hard because I'm only one person with a limited amount of time and energy. So today I want to talk to you about how I ended up in these two sort of seemingly different places and why that has been so difficult for me. So let's move to sketchbook time and talk about things. So a quick update about NaNoWriMo. I'm editing this video right now. It's a few days later, and I wanted to say I didn't really specify. NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month, and the goal is to write 50,000 words for a novel over the course of November, which comes out to just over 1,600 words a day. And it was going really well for the first few days, but then the Animal Crossing update came out and I fell behind. So I'm still working on it, but I'm not gonna push myself to meet that 50,000 word goal. Anyway, just wanted to clarify and say I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing. So, okay. That being said, if you've also been enjoying the Animal Crossing update and expansion, let me know what your favorite vacation home has been to design. My favorites so far have been the unnecessary used car dealership that I made for a monkey, as well as the very fancy restroom full of gold toilets. So let me know. So let me know. Sketchbook time, art time. I started by, it's so funny because when I do digital sketching and I do sit down to do art like this, like more like painting, or I guess traditional art, we'll just separate it into traditional and digital art for the ease of communication. I automatically, for whatever reason, go into painting planning mode where I sit down in my sketchbook, and even though I could do the same things in my sketchbook that I would do with digital art, like plan, draw characters and sketch and that sort of thing, I automatically go into, okay, I'm gonna plan for paintings. And so I start with some keywords, that's what you saw early on, and then I group them together to make a painting. Not always, but it's a really fun exercise that I would recommend. So this one, I think I linked together net and teeth, maybe, or smile. No, I think it was net, smile, and warmth. And I had an idea for something a little bit, a little bit creepy, a little bit unsettling. And actually this one, for whatever reason. I think the actual painting would be way better, but this little thumbnail just kind of creeps me out a lot, which is kind of funny because I tend to, like a little bit of, something unsettling in my art, but this just pushed it a little bit too much in a direction that I didn't like as much on this little thumbnail. But it was still really fun to, plan out colors and think about what I wanted to do. For the next couple of thumbnails, I wanted to use an art supply that's probably my least favorite art supply in existence. I know that a lot of people really like colored pencils, and I love seeing other people use them. I love it so much. I bought this giant set of Prismacolor colored pencils years ago, like 4 years ago, and I used them a little bit. There's actually some missing because I picked out some of my favorites and I have them in a separate container. I got these years ago, and I know that using super textured paper like this watercolor paper, it's going to give a really different effect. But for whatever reason, I just have a lot of trouble connecting with the colored pencil. But I wanted to work on a couple of thumbnails, and it was actually really fun. And instead of pushing myself to make something that looked perfect or pristine, I just allowed myself to have the opportunity to create little color palettes and to plan loose little thumbnails with the colored pencils. And when I allowed myself to just sort of chill and relax with them and plan colors with them, I enjoyed them a lot more. So I really should make a dedicated video where I try to overcome my dislike for the colored pencil, because being able to create little color palettes like this, I can't fine tune a color mix like I can with watercolors. I actually really like that. I think it's really fun for creating palettes. And this second little thumbnail, I'm working on a larger painting for it right now, and I'm having so much fun. And if it wasn't for the way that these colored pencils interacted with one another, I wouldn't have ended up on the final color palette that I did for this painting, which you will see the final version of for next week's video. I'm having a lot of fun with it. To talk some more about my stylistic struggles, it's really interesting. I feel like sometimes my sketching style, especially when I'm not using reference, it doesn't really vary that much between traditional art and digital art. They're pretty similar, but for whatever reason, I just can't put them together. So sometimes I've tried sketching digitally and then trying to paint it traditionally, or even just sketching in that more stylized way and trying to paint it, but I don't really like it because the way I draw certain features, like eyes for example, when I'm just doing character sketches or like more comic style sketches, the way I sketch eyes for that is not the way I sketch eyes when I'm planning to paint them. And I've tried lots of little variations to make these things work together. It just doesn't work. It just isn't happening. Because usually about twice a year I get really excited about writing stories and doing comic and all that sort of thing. So I think every year I don't want to say I get closer, but every year I learn more. And it's good for both of those things, because really I do think I'm improving in both of those two styles. It's just hard because I also build momentum. So when I spend a lot of time doing watercolor paintings, by the way, this small sketchbook painting I'm working on now is just a larger thumbnail for the one I did with colored pencil before. It's very different from the color palette of the original thumbnail, and it's also very different from the actual final color palette. So this was just a test and a fun little practice thing. Not the final colors, but I really enjoyed it. And I actually used my Shinhan watercolors. It's called Shinhan Professional, but these actually aren't their artist grade watercolors. This was like one of the first watercolor sets I ever purchased. I haven't used them in a long time, and it was surprisingly really enjoyable. Just this palette, by the way, this folding plastic palette that I bought separately and then put these watercolors into, is my favorite plastic palette. It's so sturdy. It has tons of wells. I don't know why I don't have more of them. Probably because most of my sets don't have this many colors, but it was very fun to get these out and to use them. And in saying that, I have forgotten what I was talking about before. Anyway, every year I get a little closer and I learn more about these different stylistic things. Right, I wish it was easier to combine them because it's hard for me to, here we go, I'm coming back, maintain momentum. So when I do a lot of painting like this, I feel like I'm getting better, but then I feel like I have to make a full stop and turn directions to switch to digital painting. And I get used to certain like muscle memory things and drawing things a certain way, rendering things a certain way. And then when I switch to one thing or the other, it feels like a big halt in momentum, which can be hard when I'm trying to improve and get better. So when I space things out a lot and I just work on digital art a couple times a year, it seems to be okay. To give you a little bit of example while also featuring some artists that I absolutely love, when I'm looking at art and I see art that other people are creating, I find just as much inspiration and I get just as much joy from pieces like this as I do from artwork like this. And they're so different. Like they're so different, but I love them. I love them both. And I see both of them and I want to paint, I want to create, or I want to sketch and draw and make characters. And it feels kind of weird to me. I would absolutely love to know if anyone else experiences something similar to this. I feel like so many of the artists that I look up to are so good at honing in on the kind of art that they want to create. And I feel like after, 5 years of pursuing art, more seriously, I'm just starting to hone in on my artistic voice and what I feel is finally something unique that I have to say, which has been a hard thing and a long journey. I feel like I've spent so much time just picking pieces of other people, which I know it does happen a lot, I feel like I've spent so much time doing that and I'm just now starting to find my own voice. So anyway, I would love to know if this is something that you can relate to. If this struggle resonates with you at all, please let me know. I hope you have enjoyed this chill chatty video and I look forward to sharing the full finished painting with you next week. As always, a huge thank you to my YouTube members and my patrons over on Patreon. I have an update vlog for you all today, and the painting that I'm working on for next week will be the real-time video. So lots of fun things coming, and if you'd like to support me further, you can check out those places. Okay, thank you all so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.